And they gave us James McRory and Paul McStay. They gave us Johnston, Tully, Murdoch, Gold and Hay. And most of the football greats have passed through Parkhead's gates. But to play football the Glasgow Celtic way. And they played football the Glasgow Celtic way.
Hello and welcome to the Celtic Way podcast. My name is Stephen Ray, I'm your host, and this is the first feature podcast that I've done called My Celtic Way. And I have a special guest as my first guest, and that is Seba from the Argentina Celtic Supporters Club. Seba, how you doing?
Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to be with you and with all the people who is listening right now.
Excellent. Well, we met a few years back. You had visited Scotland to a Celtic Rangers semi-final. We met outside Hampden and had a wee quick chat for the Ball Boys podcast at the time. But a lot's happened since then. But obviously, things on the park at the minute are not as good as what they were back then. What was your, just before we get into some of the subjects we're going to cover, what was your thoughts on last night?
Well, I think, first of all, I remember that chat that we had a few years ago, and regarding on yesterday on what happened with Celtic at Europe. I think that Celtic reached a point that that is difficult to get back. I think that they need changes as soon as possible. That means that they need to do it right now. The thing is that I can't see that this is going to happen. So I think that probably that was one of the most embarrassing games that I ever, or that I remember from Celtic.
Yeah, I think the support was split maybe a few weeks ago, sort of 50-50. I would say it's edging towards a majority now, are looking at it and thinking, you know, Neil Lennon, we can't take away from what Neil Lennon is. He's a legend of the club, but sometimes things just don't work out and sometimes things fall apart. You're witnessing it just now at Manchester United with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You don't get a bigger legend than him at that club. You know, it happens. So, you know, the Celtic board, in my opinion, and I'll get into this next week with my weekly podcast with Kevin, I think the bullet should have been pulled this morning. In fact, I've been saying for weeks and weeks that the bullet probably should have been pulled after Ferencváros. But I think, you know, it's dead man walking stuff. And if he's only ever one game away from a disaster, then, you know, I think the change needs to happen. And I think it could bring a bit of positivity back to the club. But I think you're right. I think things are not looking good and they don't look rosy in the garden. But we'll get on to yourself. So you are from Argentina. You started the Argentina Celtic Supporters Club. So whereabouts in Argentina are you from?
Well, in fact, we created the account because we started with an account, no, and now we are a Celtic Supporters Club. That was in 2015, and in Buenos Aires, there is a big city close the city of Buenos Aires, which is the capital of that province, called Quilmes. For those who like the beer, there is
I was going to say that beer. That's the beer, yeah.
Yes.
Never tried it. I do want to try it though.
Well, you can find some of them in Glasgow, of course, and not in this moment with the pandemic, but it's not difficult to get one. So I'm from Quilmes. I'm from this part of Buenos Aires, but in this moment there are a lot of Celtics fans from different parts of Argentina, from the north, from the south, from the center of Buenos Aires, from different parts, which I'm proud of, because I think that this is a big step that we have as a Celtic supporters club, not only in Buenos Aires. So if you travel to the north, you will find a Celtic fan.
Yeah, I mean, Argentina and Scotland has a lot of historical links. We'll get into that in a wee bit, but it doesn't surprise me that we do have, a following over in that neck of the woods. So, so growing up in Argentina, what was the football club that you followed, and sort of what was the big players that you kind of were drawn to?
Well, I follow Independiente. Independiente won 18 international cup, 7 Copa Libertadores, which is like the Champions League, and 2
That's
Copa
a record,
Sudamericana.
isn't it?
Yes. In fact, Independiente won every single final that they played. And that means that seven finals and 7 victories, which is quite a huge record for almost more than 30 years. Now it's not the best moment, but anyway, it's football. No, when you support a team, no matter the results. So I guess that everyone knows about Sergio Agüero, for example. Kun Agüero, born in Independiente, he played his first games at this club. So I remember watching him at the stadium when I was a little boy, and of course that there are legends at the club that won a lot of tournaments, a lot of cups, international cups, especially that. So it's an important club. I think that is
the class is one of the big 5. Boca, River, San Lorenzo, Racing, and Independiente are seen as a big 5 clubs, and I think they're all based in Buenos Aires. Is that correct?
Yes. River and San Lorenzo are in the city of Buenos Aires, in the main city, and Boca, Independiente, and Racing are from the outside, the greater Buenos Aires.
All right, okay. So, you've mentioned Kun Agüero. Argentine players have a habit of going back to their original club. Do you think you think Agüero will go back there someday, or do you think he'll see out his career in China or the Middle East or something like that?
I don't think Agüero is gonna return to Argentina. He said in several times that he wants to retire himself in playing for Independiente. But I don't see that possible. Not at this moment. Nowadays, it's quite difficult to go to Argentina to play football. So I think that Agüero has time, and he's gonna retire playing in Europe probably.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know the rivalry between Independiente and Racing Club, they are very, very close. I think they are the second closest stadiums together outside of Dundee. Yes. Dundee and Dundee United are the closest in the world as far as I'm aware, and I think Racing and Independiente are the second. I think they're only a few hundred metres apart. So I think there's maybe a big park or something in between both stadiums. That's a huge rivalry for that region of Buenos Aires, yeah?
Yes, well, I've been in a lot of derbies. It calls the Avellaneda derby because Avellaneda is a city where these two teams are from. So yes, I've been in both stadiums a lot of times, and to be honest, I can say that I miss them. I miss this kind of games, but yes, huge teams in Argentina.
Yeah, I've followed Argentine football kind of on and off. We used to have the highlights in the UK back in the early days. I think it was maybe the early days of Channel 5 or maybe Channel 4, but we used to get a lot of the highlights. And I always remember, obviously, the big derby games and the Racing Independiente game stuck out. I think the fans, the rivalry, just the intensity of the whole spectacle is unbelievable to watch. Sometimes what's going on in the stands may be more entertaining than what's going on in the pitch, but I think that's what draws me to Argentine football, is just the fan culture and just the craziness of it. I don't think there's a more passionate support in the world. These guys absolutely live your football. It is literally life and death at times. If anyone's ever watched any of the documentaries on the big derbies, obviously Copa 90 done one recently with the Libertadores final between River and Boca. It is an absolute must watch. It's 45 minutes of just chaos and mayhem. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that as I mentioned earlier, there's a massive link between Scottish culture and history and Argentine football. One of the guy who created, as far as I'm aware, the Argentine Football Association was a guy from the Gorbals in Glasgow.
Yes. Well, in fact, we need to get back to too much time, or more than 100 years, because the first team in Argentina who won the first tournament in that country was San Andreas, and San Andreas Athletic Club. So imagine that in 1893, 1819, a team like San Andreas winning the first official game, the first official tournament in Argentina is quite important. And of course that Watson Hutton was the guy who brought football to Argentina.
Alexander Watson Hutton, I think his name was. Yeah.
Yes, Alexander Watson Hutton. You will pronounce it better than me. But yes, he's the guy or the father of the football in Argentina.
Yeah, he's actually known as the godfather of Argentine football. I think there was a lot of people from the UK, a lot of businessmen had moved over to Argentina when Argentina was becoming a power in the world, as a place to go and live and work. I think there was a lot of railway stuff that was going on, and that's where I think the team Rosario Central comes from. Is that correct?
Yes, I was gonna say exactly what you mentioned before. Yes, Rosario Central is from a province in Argentina. It's like 3 hours driving, so it's one of the most important teams in Argentina. It's one of the oldest ones. So I think that this connection, this link between both countries, not only Scotland, of course, Scotland and England, is quite important. But of course that Alexander Hutton was the first one to bring this football to the country.
Yeah, well, what I noticed, Rosario Central are the rivals of Newell's Old Boys, which is a team that Lionel Messi famously played for as a kid. I think it was their boys' club that he played for. But what I noticed when watching one of their derby games is the Rosario Central fans fly the Scottish saltire flag as part of their sort of choreography in the stands.
Yes, well, but that is quite funny to know, because not too much people knows about this relationship between both countries. You can actually see a lot of San Andreas flags in the Argentine football because of the connection, So of course that you mentioned Rosario Central, and indeed they are that kind of team who will support the history. That is something important in Argentina, in the football in Argentina, because they all get the history an important part. So even after more than 100 years, that part, the beginning, will remain in every single stadium.
Yeah, and a lot of the clubs seem to take their name sort of from a local, part English, and how it's spelt, like River Plate, Boca Juniors, Racing Club, there's a lot of that. But as far as I'm aware, going back to your own team, Independiente, they were an amalgamation of, they were a breakaway team from an original team, as far as I'm aware.
Yes, well, in fact, Independiente in English is independent, to be an independent club. So it was just a few workers on a factory who belonged to, of course, to English people. So they decided to create a new team, an independent team, in 1904. So they brought this idea, and then you have the team. That is why the first badge of the team is the San Andreas flag.
See, I didn't know that. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously, just speaking about obviously the sort of links between the countries, but that kind of brings us on to how does a boy from Buenos Aires get into Celtic? How did it all sort of start for you, and when did it start?
Well, I think that this is a difficult question because I started to follow Celtic in 2008, watching Scott McDonald, Benegor of Hesseling, and more and more and more players. But imagine that these days were difficult to follow a team. First of all, because we didn't have the same social medias or links or the communication that we have nowadays.
Yeah, I think it was
2008.
MySpace and Bebo.
Absolutely. I was a messenger MSN with friend, but that days were too difficult to follow them and to follow Celtic. But you know that I was trying to do my best. I was trying to follow the team, watching the results. That is why sometimes I don't remember the game itself because I didn't watch them, but I know the
Yeah.
result. I know what happened. So that's a funny part of.
I'm assuming you first seen Celtic and obviously the stadium and the madness on the sort of Champions League. It was that because I think Champions League's pretty much shown the world
Yeah.
over. I would assume that's probably where you maybe seen us. Was it the strip that attracted you? Was it the fans, the passion in the stands? What was it sort of drawing you to Celtic over any other club over this way?
Yes, I think that my I like Scotland. I really like Scotland. I'm living here because I want to live here and I wanted to do it. So my link with the country and Celtic started because of that. So I started to investigate and to research about more about the club. I'm a football fan, so I'm trying to do what I like to do. So it's just football. It's difficult, you know. Sometimes you cannot pick a team and to choose a team because it's difficult to do it. So it's Celtic. I don't know. it was always inside myself, you know.
Once you knew that was it. You seen the green and white hoops because I think because the strip is so recognisable the world over. I think that it helps to sort of grow the club's brand. It's everywhere you go in the world, you pretty much see a Celtic top. No matter where you are. So I can understand why it was maybe easy to pick up. On us. Plus, obviously, everyone goes on about the atmosphere at Celtic Park on European nights. Although at the minute, we could be doing with some atmosphere at the stadium on a European night.
I think that we all know Celtic. We all know the history that they have and all these years. So I think that, of course, that apart from us, I can consider myself as a Celtic fan. We all know that it's a huge team, and of course that it's important to put them on the seat that they should be. Apart from what happened in the last years in Europe.
I mean, I don't think Celtic have played that many clubs from Argentina. Obviously, the most famous one was against your rivals, Racing Club, in the sort of World Club sort of Championship, which was more like just a one-off between the South American champions and the European champions. And obviously Celtic eventually lost that game, I think, after it got moved to Montevideo. And then obviously I think Celtic players get involved in a bust-up and stuff. So that's probably the most famous game. But I remember back in 2003, Celtic played Boca Juniors in America in a friendly match. Celtic actually beat that Boca side, and that was a very good Boca side. I think they were Libertadores champions and world champions at the time.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a very good.
In fact, Boca won in 2000, 2001, and 2003.
Yeah.
They won that 3 years Copa Libertadores. Imagine, it's like winning Champions League in 3 Champions League in 4 years, which is incredible.
Yeah, but not only to do that, to then follow that up by beating the best that Europe had, to become world champions. It just shows that the calibre of a side they had at the time. They had obviously the likes of Riquelme, Tevez, Martin Palermo, people like that playing for the club. It was a very, very talented side.
Oh, absolutely.
I think what's happened over the sort of the last 10 to 15 years is the more money has poured into the bigger leagues over here in Europe, and it's attracted the best players from South America as a whole to Europe a lot younger. Maybe you didn't see these guys until they were maybe 23, 24 to come over here and make a bit more money, but now they're coming over even younger, 18, 19. I think Aguero left your club about 18 or 19 years old, so.
Yes, Aguero is a different case because he was sold by Independiente for $28 million. Imagine in 2006. So it's a huge amount of money for these years. And he
probably
was
paid for the new stadium.
Well, in fact, the new stadium was built with that money. But imagine for a guy who is 17 years old, sold for $28 million. It's just a huge amount of money. It's a lot. Yeah. It reminds the record for the club.
It's going to be pretty hard to get someone better than him. But I do remember a couple of years back you were mentioning a fullback that you guys had that Celtic should be going after, and he turned up at Ajax, and now there's talk of him going to somewhere like Chelsea for 30-40 million, and that's Tagliafico.
Yes.
So we needed a fullback at the time, so it's very frustrating. So obviously you have now moved over to Scotland. When did you move over? Because we met in 2017, but I think you were still living in Argentina at the time.
Yes. I visited in 2017. I get back to Argentina, and then I moved on February 2019 last year. So it's more than a year and a half since I moved to Scotland, to Glasgow. So I'm happy, to be honest. Because it's a country, as I mentioned before, I always wanted to come to Scotland. I visited, and of course that to have a life, to have to be close Celtic and to be close a country that I really like is quite awesome,
Yeah. So do you? Obviously, no one's getting to see any games at the moment, but since you've started following Celtic properly, been able to see them more often, is there any games that's sort of top 3 games that you have in your mind?
Yes, probably the craziest game that I've been was against Lazio last year at Celtic Park. That Thursday. Cold Thursday, or for me at least, it was a cold Thursday. I remember well that game was amazing. But I also been on a Celtic Rangers. Remember that 2-1 with Forrest scoring the second goal for Celtic. So I've been in that derby, which was my first derby at Celtic Park, because I've been on a Celtic Rangers. In fact, in 2017, in fact, it was my first ever game watching Celtic. So I guess that game against Lazio and Rangers were the best for myself.
Excellent. So and players, so you get favourite players that you've followed since your time following Celtic?
Well, I guess that Scott Brown is the guy who every single fan, or at least in general, all the Celtic fans will support. But I started to when I started to follow Celtic with Scott McDonald and Benegor of Hesselink. I remember that I'm correct if I'm wrong. George Samaras wasn't that squad, or just a few years after. Yeah.
No, he was.
So yeah, I remember that these players, and I fall in love with that team.
Yeah, so obviously, like you've said, you decided to up sticks from Argentina and move to Scotland. I mean, that's a big thing. But you're a young guy in your 20s, I'm assuming. Is it journalism that you're doing over here, or is it?
Yes. I'm doing some stuff with the Scottish football, and of course trying to get a bit more of Spanish to the club, to Celtic. Fortunately, Laxalt is helping us with his good performance. So it's good. I think that there are a lot of Celtic fans, Spanish speaker Celtic fans who support the club. So I think that it would be massive for the club.
I think that's something that Celtic definitely need to tap into, because if you look at a lot of the big clubs around Europe, you'll see an English account for like say Bayern Munich or Paris Saint-Germain, Barcelona. They'll have a specific account. I follow Inter Milan in Italy. Yeah, they have an English account for the club, but they also have the main account, which they put out everything in Italian. And I do think Celtic, it's something that Celtic, probably could do a lot better. Is, Spanish is a world spoken language, or it's one of the most spoken languages in the world across many countries. I'd like to think that the club could, dedicate a couple of different accounts to maybe couple of different types of languages. I do think they fail sometimes when it comes to the branding and the social network side. I think they've got better over the last few years, but and I know that you've mentioned about commentary in Spanish, or maybe on Celtic TV, or even tweeting stuff out in Spanish, because it would help to grow the numbers across the world.
Yes, I think that it will help Celtic to be more known in the world, because as you mentioned, Spanish is one of the most important languages in the world. There are plenty, and when I say that there are plenty of Celtic fans in the world who are Spanish speakers, I'm telling the truth, because I know all these Celtic fans. Imagine that, fortunately, having the Argentina Celtic Supporters Club, a lot of Celtic fans are contacting me to get more involved in Celtic. So and we are talking in Spanish, even if it's not a Spanish club. So I think that it will help Celtic to improve, or at least to help in any way possible.
Yeah, I think Celtic's one of those clubs that it's not just a football club that's it's sort of built up in its own sort of community. I think there's a story to tell with Celtic that's that a lot of fans of other clubs across the world can maybe relate to. How the club was born, like you were saying about how Independiente was grown out of some guys at a factory decided they wanted their own team to be independent from the other team, and I love that kind of thing where there's clubs that have a story to tell. There's real history behind it, and I think it's because Celtic have got such a history behind them. I think they should use that and tap into that more. And like you say, if they're able to reach out across the globe in different languages, and make the fact that we've got Diego Laxalt, who is a well-known footballer from your parts. Obviously Uruguay is a small country, but it's a country with a massive reputation for players and as a national side. So we should be tapping into things like that. And the fact that the guy is a very good player, and he's shown already he's a very good player, it's definitely.
Yes, that is why every time I'm talking with Celtic fans, and I'm telling them that we have an Argentina Celtic Supporters Club. I don't want to say that it only represents Argentina. What we want to do, or what I want to make, is that this Celtic Supporters Club represent the entire South America. It's for those Spanish speakers who follow Celtic in Colombia, in Ecuador, in Venezuela, in Chile, whatever. That's important, because we have a link, and I think that we need to use it to help the club. That's it.
Yeah, and you guys, and particularly yourself, you could be the bridge, if between the club and the region, so to speak, to help grow that, because we're in a market. People like to just think of football clubs as just football, but it's a business now, and you've got to put yourself out there to grow your audience. We're an entertainment business, and we should be doing more. And I think we should be scouting your region a lot more for players. There's definitely players in Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, like you say, Colombia, who can make a big difference to the club. We could buy at a reasonable price and then sell them on, because they're always going to want to go to the bigger leagues. But Celtic could be that stepping stone.
Absolutely. There are a lot of players from South America that are playing in different leagues in the world, and not only in Italy, in Spain, or in France, or in Portugal. They are playing in every single part of the world, like Russia, Latvia, I don't know what, even in Scotland, because you go to the north, you go to Dundee, and you will find Adrian Sporle, who played for Banfield, a team from Argentina, and not one of the biggest teams, just a current team, and he was playing there, and now he jumped to Scotland to play for Dundee to get the promotion to the first division. So it's not a crazy idea, it's something that it could happen, but it's just a decision of the team. If they don't want, or I think that they don't want to look on this market, in the South American market, they will not do it if they don't.
Yeah. I mean, you just mentioned Banfield. Probably one of my favourite players, top 5 players, non-Celtic related of all time, is Javier Zanetti. And as far as I'm aware, he came from Banfield to Inter Milan back in the mid-90s. He's a huge player for Inter and Argentina.
Do you know that he was rejected by Independiente when he was a young guy?
Oh, that's a killer.
He's an Independiente fan, and of course that he has his role in Italy in Inter, but they say that's the lovely stories about football. When they said no, you will not be a good player. Well, are you sure? Yeah, okay, let's go.
Well, we've had a similar situation with Andy Robertson, where we turned him away. As a 15 or 16-year-old, he's ended up at Queen's Park and then works his way up to Dundee United, Hull, and now he's a European and Premier League champion, with Liverpool. Yeah. So obviously what people would turn around and say is, well, if Andy Robertson stayed, like Kieran Tierney might not have come through. So, there's always that. I was going to mention, we can't have an Argentine on without speaking about the greatest player to come out, and I don't mean Lionel Messi. I'm talking about the great man Diego Maradona. As far as I'm aware, he's unwell at the minute. He's in hospital. Yes. He just turned 60. I know he's a massive Boca Juniors fan, but he did play for Argentinos Juniors, and he did play briefly for Newell's Old Boys as well. But how is he seen across all the clubs and fans in Argentina? Is he a hero for them all, or is he only loved by the teams that he played for?
Who, Maradona?
Yes.
I think that he's a person that who doesn't have colors. We don't care because Maradona always says that he's a Boca fan, and we all know that he's a Boca fan. I don't like Boca, but anyway, we all know that he's a Boca fan, and even that we all love him because he was the best player in the world. There's that discussion between Messi or Maradona, which I don't like because I don't see the point to compare them because different football. So I think that Maradona is it's like a religion, Every time, every part of the world, there are a lot of stories and that people can tell you about Maradona in, I don't know, South Africa, Maradona in America, Maradona in China, and Maradona is entire world. It's crazy, but it's just a feeling that when every time that you see him is wow. That's expression.
Yeah, if there's any younger listeners that have heard of Maradona or seen clips of them, you have to try and look for as much as you can on him from the 1986 World Cup. The guy was on an absolute another level, and I don't think there's ever been a player that played at that level in that tournament ever. That he showed that year. He took what was a pretty average Argentine side all the way, to the final and win against West Germany. And then 4 years later, he pretty much single-handedly took an even more average aging Argentina side all the way to the final, only to lose by a penalty from a dive from Jurgen Klinsmann in 1990.
Once again against Germany.
Against West Germany in Italy. Just the performance. And although in the final he didn't play particularly well, the Germans done well to mark him out of the game, but he still managed to find the winning pass to Burruchaga to score the winner. The history between myself and my love of Argentina and Argentine football, it started as I got tickets as an 11-year-old. I played for a boys' club at under 12 level, and it was on the lead up to the 1990 World Cup. We just won our league, and as a present or a prize to all the team, we got tickets to go and see Scotland against Argentina in a friendly just before that World Cup. We all thought we were going to get to see Diego Maradona play that night, but he was injured. Unfortunately, he didn't play. Scotland won the game 1-0 against the current world champions. A guy called Stuart McKimmie from Aberdeen scored the winner. And ever since then, I've always followed Maradona. I mean, I've got that many Maradona retro tops, it's not even funny. And laterally, after watching Roman Riquelme for Villarreal against Celtic, I started to take an interest in Boca Juniors because he went back to Boca not long after. And pretty much after that, I've kind of followed them. But I enjoy the derbies and all the big games in Argentina. And I like to, obviously, I'd prefer Independiente to win against Racing because of Racing's history with Celtic. So,
yes, absolutely.
But, it's funny how things kind of work. That just a simple thing as a kid, even lasts with me. I've never owned a Scotland top, but I've always owned an Argentina top. Whatever World Cup they're playing in, I've always had that top. It's a bit sad, but I should own Scotland tops, but I've never done it.
Well, but you have this chance with a good moment for Scotland trying to get to the Europa Cup. So I think that it's a good moment. But you mentioned one player that, apart from Messi and Maradona, for me was the best play that I ever seen in my life, on the pitch, on TV, on video, whatever, which was Juan Roman Riquelme. I think that he literally was the best player I've seen in my life.
At Celtic Park, I would put him in probably the top 3 players I had ever seen play at Celtic Park against Celtic. He played for Villarreal that night, and we could not get the ball off him. I think he put Sonny Anderson through on 1-on-1 with David Marshall at least 4 times on the night. He absolutely destroyed us. Somehow Celtic managed to get away that night with a 1-1 draw. In the second leg in the quarter-final, they absolutely destroyed us 2-0. Riquelme was on another level, and it was just... I knew of Riquelme because he'd been at Barcelona. I hadn't seen much of him at his early days at Boca. But anybody who wants to see a guy at the absolute peak of his powers, it was when he went back to Boca in 2007 and he led them to the Libertadores final to beat Gremio 5-0 in aggregate. He was on a complete other level to any player in that region. I think he actually won South American Player of the Year that season. He's an unbelievable player. I see a lot of Riquelme and a Tom Rogic in the way he plays.
Yes.
Tom Rogic's not at that level, but just the way he takes the ball, it's so graceful, and how he takes everything on a half turn, and he's really difficult to get the ball off of. Riquelme is Tom Rogic times 100 probably.
But if you compare, of course that is not good to compare, but
no.
Rogic has
more style. He has that kind of lazy, lackadaisical style, but is just so talented.
Yes, no, absolutely. When you close your eyes, he puts a good ball to the box and with a good assistance. But of course, that Riquelme was incredible. Was an incredible player.
Yeah. So I just want to say thanks for coming on. I just wanted to kick off my new feature, my Celtic Way. For you, it's been a long journey to get into Celtic, starting in Argentina, and finding Celtic sort of through TV and stuff like that 12, 13 years ago, and now you live in the town and the city of that club. So, I hope things go well for you over here. Are you planning on being here for good, or have you set a time limit, maybe to go back home, or?
I don't think so. My plan is to stay in Scotland. So because that's the country that I want to be. So I think that I'm gonna be here close Celtic, and hopefully trying to get the chance to see a game. In fact, if I'm not wrong, yeah, I watched the last game of Celtic with fans. I think that they play against Hamilton at Celtic Park just the week before the Celtic Ranger was cancelled, suspended. So yeah. I can say that at least I've been in the last Celtic game with fans.
Yeah, I think that's why the likes of social media has been really, full on with some of the results, and a lot of the comments are, justified at the moment. But I think because people are not able to go to the pub or go to the games on the supporters buses or travel in cars with their friends, they're able to get whatever's on their chest off. Whereas right now, everyone's at a social distance, not allowed to visit family and friends or go to the football. Everyone seems to have a Twitter account or a Facebook account, and everything is online. And it just, the volume for, everything has just been turned up to 100 almost,
It's a different world. We all know, but we need to get used to this kind of things, unfortunately.
Yeah. When I might say actually, when I met you in 2017, it was your brother you were with. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Is he still back in Argentina, or has he come over with you?
No, he's in Argentina because he's studying, so he will probably be here soon if it's possible, with the flights, of course. But another Celtic fan that we have in Argentina.
Well, Seba, I appreciate you coming on. We'll get this out to everyone, and hopefully they enjoy listening to your story on My Celtic Way. And I just want to say thanks for joining me.
No, thank you, because I feel really proud to be the first one. So, no, thank you so much. I really like to talk about football, to talk about Celtic and this story. So thank you so much. Please stay safe, everyone who is listening this podcast. So thank you again.
Yeah, thanks very much. Catch you again.
Okay, thank you so much.